Here we have a simple counter and a button that increments it. The counter value is kept here in this state variable. Our button is here. Whenever the click event happens, it calls handle increment counter click, and that function increments the counter by 1. We also have an input here, which at the moment does nothing. I want to be able to set this input value to any number, and whenever I click the increment counter button, I want the counter to be incremented by the amount that is set here. Let's see how we can do that. There are two main ways of getting the value of this input, and I will show you the one that is more commonly used in React. Let's first create a step state variable, and let's set its initial value to 1. And then here, let's set the value property of this input to step. Now, if you look here, we can see that the input is showing the value of our step variable. But when we try to change the value, nothing happens. The reason for that is we have already set the value of our input to step. And when we click these buttons, React does not automatically change the value of our step variable here. We should be the ones that do that. And let's see how we can do that. This input component here has an onChange property, and it takes a function reference. Let's call this handle step change. And whenever a change event happens, it will call this function. Let's create that function now, handle step change. Now, in this function, we need to be changing the step variable. So we need to be changing it to whatever its new value is. But how do we get this new value? What we will use for that is the event parameter here. Whenever this event handler is called, an event object will be passed to this function as an argument. And from that, we can do this. We can get the event object. It has a property called current target, and that has a property called value, which points to the value of this input. But be careful here, because the value property is a string, and our step variable is a number. So let's convert this string to an integer, and this is how we do that. We use the parseInt method. Now, whenever the change event happens, it calls handle step change. Handle step change gets an event object, and within that event object, we know what the new value of this input should be, and then we change the step variable to its new value. And here also, we should be incrementing the counter by whatever that step value is. Now let's see what we have. Here we can change the step value. Let's set it to 10, and we can see that everything is working properly. Now, at first, this might be looking confusing. Why are we setting the value and then we're using an onChange event to change the value? Why can't we just set the initial value of the input and then here just read the value of that input directly? Why do we need to keep a separate state variable? And that is a fair question. And you don't have to do that. There's actually another way of doing all of this. What we're doing here is we're using the input component as a controlled component. That is the name. And the reason for that is we are the ones that are controlling the value of this input. It doesn't handle its own value. We control its value. We could have also used an uncontrolled component. We could use that method with this input here as well. But I will argue that this method is more flexible, but it's also important to know the other method as well. And in another episode, I will be talking about controlled and uncontrolled components. All right, that's it for this episode. I hope you found it useful, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.